Michael.
Good morning. How are we?
All right, man. It's been like 3 weeks since you've been here. I've missed you, man. Uh,
I know it's
yep,
been a
yep.
bit, but excited to get back in it and excited for today's topic, of course, as well.
Yes, awesome. And Michael, you weren't with me last week, but I told our listeners that I was in mourning, obviously, because Kentucky had just lost the night before. But man, what March Madness and NCAA basketball! Two number ones go down last night. Only one number one left standing. We said all year, Michael, right? Like this was going to be an amazing March Madness because you just didn't know who was going to emerge. Um, so
Yeah, and as someone who has zero stake with any team in the tournament, I am doing just fine by watching everybody rise and fall. So it's a good vantage point. I highly recommend it for those of you who actually lose sleep over this. By not being involved at all, it is so much more fun.
But Michael, you live in Louisville, and you guys just hired a new coach. So very
Yeah,
exciting.
hopefully things are going to be changing for us. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Michael, great again. For everyone, just a couple reminders. Next week, really excited. We're going to have Mark Mickelson with us. He will be here. He is the founder of the CX Forums. There's 6 forums that take place throughout the country. The first one is actually April 19th in Atlanta. And we've partnered with him, and I'm going to be at all 6 of them. So I know April is Atlanta, May is in Boston, and June is in Chicago. That's the very first 3 I remember. So it'll be great to have him on here. He brings great experienced people together with us as well. Don't forget about our resources at Mophie as well. Tons of resources out there. Go see it. But most importantly, I am so excited. This is like retake, I guess, or take 2. Michelle and I were doing a live show 2 weeks ago, and all of the equipment just kind of quit working, and I realized we weren't even doing anything. So we brought Michelle back this week. So excited to have her back. Michelle is the former SVP of Customer Experience for HomeServe, a global home warranty company. Michelle is a huge believer that customer service begins, and I love this, when customer experience fails. She's a huge proponent of leveraging technology for enablement of employees for better customer experiences, not for the replacement of employees. Currently at a startup leading up the customer experience, she's in the throes of planning and laying the groundwork while figuring out how to make her kids' favorite junk foods healthy. And so we are so excited to welcome Michelle to the show today. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, and we're just going to let everyone know, like, Michelle's not like on this bouncing thing. Michelle is our first show. She asked me a couple weeks ago, she's like, hey, Shawn, in my meetings, I love to do, be on my walking treadmill and my desk. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And so Michelle is walking. So don't think like your camera's doing anything weird, but it is so awesome to have you here with us, Michelle. And we've got people listening in from all over Chattanooga, Tennessee, here, Arizona. So really excited about that. Hey, Michelle, we dive into this question, and I love it with every one of our guests. Just a simple question is, why do you do what you do? We heard that great bio, and what keeps you motivated as you're doing it?
Yep. So first of all, shout out to Chattanooga because that's where the contact center for HomeServe is. I spent a lot of time in Chattanooga. So why do I do what I do? It's really about kind of this bizarre fascination with customer and with human behavior. So started out a long time ago, very early on in my career, and it was really about publicity and marketing. And then I eventually moved from that role into more of an account management role, client services type of role. And I started realizing that in order to be successful in all of those roles, you had to really understand what people wanted to be able to deliver on that. And it sounds so simplistic, but actually figuring out what people want isn't that easy. And so sometimes you have to kind of dig into it and get that understanding. And that, to me, is the crux of customer experience, is knowing what customers really want and then delivering on it. So for whatever reason, I've taken a bunch of tests. I'm like off the charts when it comes to customer experience on these charts, like, compared to operations and strategy and other stuff. And I guess it's just the way my mind works. So I get a thrill out of it, and it keeps me motivated, because never is a day the same, right? And I love that newness to it and the constant change and challenge. And that's what keeps me super motivated in this field.
Awesome. I think that's probably the same thing for Michael and I. I don't ever not think about it, no matter what we're doing. Even like we're staying in Airbnb right now in Nashville, and the smoke detectors. Of course, the battery starts chirping. At least it wasn't at 2 a.m. But we sent the people a note, and Michael, within 10 minutes they were here, and I'm like, I'll use these people again. They're on it. So what could have been a fail was a thing that will keep us here. Well, Michael, I know we've got a couple of Stokes and questions from Michelle. You want to jump in and get into this conversation with her?
Sure. So the Stoke that we have for today is a statement about brand promise, and it's whether a startup or an established business, having a brand promise is critical to making sure that everyone in the business keeps the core tenets in mind when making a decision. So, I guess my question is, brand promise is one of those things that gets tossed around quite a bit. Like, you go to whatever, meeting to identify pain points, and it's, we're not delivering on our brand promise, or, our brand promise, and it's, what is your brand promise? Like, what are you even talking about? And most of the time they don't even know. They know the term brand promise, but they don't know what their brand promise is. And it's some like ambiguous thing. So when you talk about a brand promise, what do you mean? And how does it come together at the heart of the company, connect all those systems together?
Yeah, so I think that those are a couple of great points and questions for sure. I've definitely heard brand promise, mission, vision, all those things kind of roughly abused within organizations. So very specifically, I'll tell you a couple of things that the brand promise isn't. So the brand promise isn't who this company is going to be in the future. That to me is more like a vision statement. It also isn't the statement that you make internally to employees to get them pumped and motivated around what it is that you're bringing to the organization, which is kind of like a mission statement to me. To me, the brand promise is really about, how do you want a customer to feel after every single interaction with your organization? And it's really important to think about how you want customers to feel, because as you and I know, and I think some more people are kind of getting on board to this, how customers feel, determines like 70% of the time whether or not they're going to keep engaging with you as a business. And whether it's 70 or 80, I'm sure that's arguable, but it's a ridiculously high percent. And so I think we as organizations very often spend so much time not thinking about how people are feeling in their interactions with us that we forget about that piece. And since it's such an important driver, what I'm recommending to people is take a step back and figure out what that emotion is that you want people to feel. And so I'll give you a really great example. So what we've been doing at the startup is we actually, because we have the luxury of time to be able to do this, we're not, mid-flight in a business. So I want to caveat that, but I'll also tell you what you can do if you're in an existing business, because I did it there too at HomeServe. What you can do with a startup is you can all literally sit down and say, okay, what do I want our customers to feel? What's going to differentiate us in a marketplace when you think about what customers want to feel? I think that's really important too, is, what's going to be my stake in the ground in terms of how I'm going to be different from others. And the decision that we made is that we wanted all of our customers to feel confident in every interaction that they have with us. Confident that, and it's really about home ownership, confident in their home ownership. And that's a different feeling than most people think about when they think about home ownership, but it's like the biggest investment that you're going to make in your life. And very often you feel really insecure around gosh, what happens, if you're in a home warranty situation, what happens if something breaks in this home? Or what did I just spend, $750,000 on? I don't even really know what I'm getting. So it's that feeling of confidence. And we want to have that in every transaction and have people walking away feeling more educated and therefore more confident around their decision-making processes.
So when you say brand promise, you're actually talking about a statement that you align around, or is it a word that you align around, or a paragraph? What are you aligning people around?
Yeah, so for us, it was a statement. It was like a 1 to 2 sentence, 3 at the very most, that would describe how you want your customers to feel and how you're going to enable them to feel that way. And that was what we came up with. And that was after these questions around, what do you want to be unique about your experience or your product in the marketplace? There's a line of questioning that you can go through in order to get to these nuggets that you pull out to say, this is what differentiates us. And what we ended up doing is, I brought everybody to the table with these questions, and we went through the 20 questions. Everyone gave their one-word answer to all of these questions. And then we ranked them. And we sent a survey out to the team again, and we said, all right, here are the 3 top answers that we heard for these questions. Now you got to pick the one. And so we went through that process. And then afterwards with that feedback, I said, okay, team, here are the 5 words that we've said we want to have be part of our brand promise, the 5 things that came out that resonated from that. Now let's construct a statement around this. And oh, by the way, if you realize that in constructing the statement, these 5 things aren't the 5 things and it's something else, that's okay too. We can always come back and revisit it. So that's exactly the process that we went through. And so that way we got to the statement where it had the 5 critical things about how we wanted people to feel in their interactions with us. And so that's if you're doing it like new organizations. So this is the great thing about the brand promise. Okay. In an established business, and then I'll come back in terms of how we're using it. So in an established business, we already had I'll call it something close to a brand promise. It was really almost like a constitution for the organization. These are the 5 things that we have to deliver on. And if any decision kind of belies those 5 things, then that's the wrong decision to make. The issue that we had was that we had developed those, I don't know, some years ago, and we needed to really go back to the business and say, are these 5 things still the 5 things? And so I met with all of the functional groups. So I pulled together a team in operations, marketing, legal, HR, all the teams. And I sat down with them and I said, here are the 5 things. You guys, do those still resonate for you? And people came back with feedback, said yes, in some cases, no, in others. Got a little feedback around why not. And then I went back and I said, okay, now based off of all that feedback, here are the 2, making it up, that need to change out of the 5. Here's my recommendation how the 2 should change. Went back to those groups and said, here's the change for those 2. What do you guys think? And got to a point where we got to a revised kind of 5 points around what we could all get comfortable living with. And the objective of that tool in both cases, whether in the startup or in the new, is that CX and the representatives of CX can't be involved in every single decision that gets made in the organization, particularly when you're talking about a huge global organization, right? So finance is making its decisions, accounting is making its decisions, HR is making its decisions. As long as they're making them against the brand promise, they take the brand promise and they say, is my decision, making it up, to do a price increase on our policyholders? Does that comply with this brand promise? And if it doesn't, how do I get it to comply with the brand promise? How do I change my price increase? Maybe it's how I communicate the price increase. Maybe it's who gets the price increase. You make those modifications so that it then complies with that brand promise that you came up with. So it becomes a tool for customer experience to be embedded in every aspect of the business without you physically having to be there for the decision-making process.
So Michael, this is what, Michelle, we talk about at Mophie around an experience promise. So, and we actually morphed that from, Disney, who creates, they give purpose statements and it's all internal. So I love the process that you just talked about. Like I was taking notes of, okay, we got to talk to Michelle. Like, what are those 20 questions you asked? So like when we're working with, we were just working with an organization in Alabama yesterday where we're starting this that way, just with the team to move to an organization. And I love that. So, Michael, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, yeah, I'm interested to know the impact, right? Of surely there's impact with this. So what changes do you see? And maybe for the folks listening today, what's the value prop there for them to go to their organizations and say, we have to do this, y'all. We're losing business because we're not doing this.
Yeah, I think the first thing it does is it leads efficiency to decisions around customer experience. And what I mean by that is the way I've seen it work when you don't have a brand promise in place is you make a decision. It's not the best for the customer experience. 6 months later, you start seeing the impact of that decision and its negative impact. And then customer experience gets involved, whether through VOC or some other mechanism. And then they come back to the organization and they say, hey, this isn't quite working. We might want to think about doing this differently, right? You've wasted 6 months and who knows how many customers you've lost in the process. So by having a brand promise in place, you can kind of nip that in the bud at the very beginning. And that way you're more efficient as a business. You aren't making that customer experience mistake because you've been able to kind of figure it out in the beginning. So that's what I would say is really the value and the takeaway is the efficiency now and how it's going to benefit the organization. Now, of course, this only comes if you get your brand promise right, which to be fair, right? So it does take, and it's worthwhile to invest the time to get that brand promise right. So it's also obviously to help you get that time from all the people that you're speaking to about this. You'll need that value proposition of saying, look, I'm going to help us from a decision-making perspective, recognizing that customers make decisions based upon feelings. 70% of that decision-making is based upon feelings. We want to make sure we get that feeling right. So here's the tool to help us all do that, because not everybody thinks the way we think. Not everyone's thinking about customer experience and how customers will feel. So this is the way to help you do that. It's a way to take the people that are probably more I'll call it the numbers people, and it's no offense to the numbers people, but enable them to be able to think in this way that's maybe less black and white for them.
Well, and Michelle, our listeners know, and you and I've had this conversation. I was a numbers person when I started in guest experience at Disney. Like I was a finance person, but I learned it, and that that's just me. Like if I had my pom-poms here, like I have at home, that's a huge shout out because it really ties the organization holistically across. And then you don't have those, mean finance people or those ugly legal people because you're building towards that.
Right. And I think one of the great things too, if you talk, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I'm lagging, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the great things about the process of building the brand promise, particularly in larger organizations, is you do get that connectivity with all these different departments. And I definitely spent that time in meeting with them, giving them that point of view of, look, here's why customer experience is important and valuable to the organization. Here's what that means for both of the companies, right? We're all membership based. So we're talking about membership where there's continuity and there's a month by month and you want high renewal rates. And all of that only comes when you have great customer experiences. So the tie-in from the benefit to the business was really straightforward in those conversations for me. But I spent that time when I talked to the marketing group and the legal team and the HR group, being able to kind of set that piece up. And I'll tell you, it was an interesting moment, particularly when I met with the HR team to first go through this exercise. And I remember so clearly one of the leaders in HR said to me, I'm happy to go through this and I'm really grateful that you're involving me, but I don't really see what my role is in the customer experience. And that, as much as you have that reaction, Shawn, right? Like I was thinking the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what do you mean? But it was a great opportunity for me to be able to tell everyone and show everyone how directly related their decisions are to the customer experience, and how, as much as they think they may be just a cog in a wheel, they're not. Their decision making has a direct influence on the customer experience and therefore on the growth of the business. So you can use those conversations to bring that kind of value as well, not just with the output of the brand statement, but to create that connectivity amongst the groups.
So what about leadership buy-in? Because we've also been in situations where a mid-level leader, even a CX person who is under marketing, who's under finance, who, in terms of org chart, right? In the middle level, we're all in for this. C-suite just couldn't get their head around why this is worth the time or money to invest in to get their people focused. What would your approach be for a CX person who's kind of here in the organization to be able to get the buy-in that they need from up here?
Yeah, so I think you need to appeal in two ways, right? One is going to be you need to appeal in a numbers way. So figure out, if you can, how do you demonstrate the value of great customer experiences? So in a membership business where there's a continuity element to it and a month over month, you can get to that number pretty quickly. You can easily show happy customers are customers for 7 years versus unhappy customers are only customers for 3 years, and the difference in that revenue. That's easy. But I think what a lot of people miss out on is that when you appeal to a C-suite or even a senior management team level, you can't just go at it with numbers, because just like consumers make decisions based on feelings, so do C-level executives, so do senior level management executives. So you have to come in understanding and thinking about, what kind of a feeling do I want these executives to walk away with? And how can I leverage that in order to get the output and the decision that I want?
I think that's just a mic drop right there for us. And I'm sure a lot, because we hear a lot of frustration from a lot of CX people that say, I just can't get any buy-in from above, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, which is just, being an office of one who just kind of maintains the status quo.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that from what I've seen, sometimes when people are preparing for these types of meetings and going in, it's not that it's combative, but they're coming at it very much like, this is the right way, and we've been doing it the wrong way for a really long time. And if you think about what kind of a feeling is that going to leave the executive team with, it's going to make them feel like, you thought I was doing it wrong all along. That doesn't make me feel like I really want to buy into what you're selling, right? And if you instead kind of switch that script and you think about, how do I encourage them on what has worked well so far, and say, here's how I think we can amplify that, and here are the tools to be able to amplify it, or, and the brand promise being one of those tools, then you're getting them into a different mindset that's going to have them more open to collaboration with you.
Love it. All right, Michelle, we're getting close to the end of the show, and we have to ask this question. What experience trends do we need to be paying attention to for 2023 and beyond? Give us one trend that you think we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, so I think my trend might be a little bit different than other people's. I'm seeing a lot of artificial intelligence and claims around capabilities around artificial intelligence. And what I expect to be seeing over kind of the next year and a half or so is an aggregation of that space. You've got a lot of startups in that space right now, and I think you're going to start to see some of that capability narrowing in and getting better and better. But there'll be some acquisitions in that space, and I think some really positive movement. So I think you're going to see AI move from a capability of essentially taking voice to text to start layering on really sentiment, being able to understand sarcasm, other things like that, and therefore really being able to be a meaningful tool for those of us in CX that are trying to mine all of the information that's out there in all of our interactions with our customers.
Love it. Love it. Well, Michelle, thank you. The retake worked. So good to have you here. If you want to connect with Michelle, connect with her on LinkedIn. If you can't find her there, go to my LinkedIn. We're connected. But Michelle, thank you so much for being here. If you'll hang out, Michael and I will say bye to you after we close up here. So just hang out with us for a little bit. And hey, if you want to connect with us, mofi.co. We're really excited. I'd love to talk about all things experience, as well as ShawnNason.com. You can send us an email at hello@mofi.co. Right now, our podcast, The Combustion Chronicles, is not in season. We're preparing for the next one, but go out and listen to them. I know season 5, we talked to a ton of CX leaders, so go out and listen to that. connect with Michael and I on LinkedIn. And most importantly, that if you play in this experience ecosystem that we've been talking about, we want you to be a part of it. So Michael, thanks for an amazing Friday. Have a great weekend, and a great weekend to everybody else. And we will talk to you all real soon.
There.